Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope the sun is shining. I hope the birds are singing. I hope the wind is at your back. Today, we are joined by the architects of Health Reform 2025, Dr. Stephen Bizal, best-selling author, national speaker, functional medicine pioneer, and the bold voice demanding we replace sick care with the U.S. Department of Wellness. Joining Dr. Stephen Bizal is the co-creator of Health Reform 2025, Julia El Haj, marketing strategist and narrative architect. Julia's conviction is simple. People aren't broken, systems are. Her work rewrites the story of health, shifting culture and policy by putting the human body back in charge of its own healing. The message is simple and urgent. 2025 is the year we stop managing disease and start creating unbreakable health. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Stephen Bizal and Julia El Haj. Julia, Stephen, thank you so much for being here today. How are you guys?
Good. I'm good.
Doing well, George. Go ahead, Julia, your turn.
Oh, no,
This is like tag team wrestling, right? This is tag team conversation. So anyways, I will always defer to the lady present. So.
Oh, well, thank you. But yes, I'm doing great. And thank you for the nice introduction.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And while it was a brief introduction, let me kick it off to you. Let me start with you, Julia. Tell me a little bit about how you got here, a little bit about your background and why what you're doing is so important and why you're so motivated about it.
I think in short, it's simple. I come as a mother and a woman who's really concerned for the future of our young people. I founded Hermetica Health about 20 years ago, which is really my wellness vision and a place for my strategic thought leadership and how to bring wellness to the forefront of the conversation. And Steve and I actually worked together or came across each other also around 20 years ago at the Whitaker Wellness Institute, and we crossed paths there. And he had shared some of his ideas with me, and I kept them in mind over the years. And as an athlete, as someone who keeps health at the center of my own life, and after COVID, I really felt it was my responsibility actually to join this project with Steve and help bring it to life.
Nice. I appreciate that.
So that's a little bit about it.
Well, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Dr. Bizal, maybe you could share a little bit about your vision and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, okay. If we take it all the way back, I think it goes all the way back to, I was an athlete in college. And so
I'm sorry, it just cut out. Oh, I'm sorry. It cut out. So I didn't know if I was back in or not or what was going on. I apologize.
Nah, it's all right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear or see either one of you. I was like, where did they go?
Oh, okay. So it wasn't us. All right. Anyways, what I was saying was it goes all the way back to my college days where I was an athlete, and peak performance was what the issue was. So everything I was doing in my life was to go after every 1/10 of 1% I could do to optimize my performance in the athletic arena. And so that kind of had what started out as a athlete, human performance. Then when I went into corporate America, it was basically the same game. Everything you learned in the athletic field, you could take and apply for performance and productivity and being successful in the corporate arena as well. And then a turning point for me, because I started out in the business world. Turning point for me was 40 years ago. I was a commodity broker selling gold and silver. But with always a very active health and fitness kind of a lifestyle regimen. For me, it was always lifestyle. This wasn't just something I did on the side. My whole life was committed around that, because what I realized was that health was the cornerstone for whatever you wanted to achieve in life. So if you could optimize your health, you stood a better chance no matter what direction you decided to go. And while I was a commodity broker, I ended up helping a guy who was a buddy broker of mine who weighed 365 pounds at the time. And he was diagnosed with a terminal condition because of the unhealthy lifestyle, the medications he was on or whatever. He asked me if I'd help him lose weight. And because he was diagnosed with a terminal condition. Fear of death can be a tremendous motivator for some folks. So at the time, I was an athlete, hadn't been in healthcare, and his name was John. And I said, John, listen, everything you're trying to do to lose weight, most of it's bullshit because they don't address the core issues, okay? So as one friend helping another, I worked with John over the course of a year. We ended up becoming roommates so I could coach him 24/7 and direct and guide everything that he did. The bottom line was he ended up losing 100 pounds over the course of the year. His thyroid kicked back in, that they told him he was shot, and he was able to get off all his medication and all his vitals came back down to normal. And what that led to was in 1980, 81, so I'm dating myself here, I ended up opening up the first executive fitness training one-on-one coaching concept in Southern California. I did that for a year, and then I realized if I really wanted to stay doing this kind of thing, because I had a knack for it. I had a knack for helping people in that capacity, that I'd be better off as a doctor. So at the ripe age of 30, I went to chiropractic school. And then I got out, ran a practice for a bunch of years, and had a good run for about 5 or 6 years, mostly chiropractic. But what I started doing was expanding the scope of what I was doing from a health standpoint, because there was always a nutrition piece, not just the exercise piece, but the nutrition piece. And I found that I was ending up taking courses like, and this is 30 years ago, before the term functional medicine was even being used. I was taking courses like functional endocrinology, functional blood chemistry. And when I could put those all together, I ended up creating what was an early on concierge wellness practice, where I would work with people one-on-one, do very extensive blood profiles. I would do hormone assays. I would do metal toxicity profiles, because all those things tell you something from a different perspective and in different parts of the system.
Yeah.
And when you put those all together, what you got was a nice landscape picture of everything that was going on with the individual. And
Right.
here was a common pattern, okay? Without exception, no matter what illness or what disease that you were struggling with, there were always 3 things going on. Didn't matter whether it was cancer or heart disease or diabetes or fibromyalgia. Number 1 is there were chemical imbalances. And the body's nothing more than a series of chemical reactions controlled by electricity. Number 2, there were hormone imbalances. And hormones regulate all those other millions of chemical reactions that are going on at any one point in time. And then because of that, because your hormones, for example, also regulate how you use nutritional supplements and nutrients in your body. So there were nutritional deficiencies. And with that kind of a mapping, I could start with nutritional deficiencies, address those issues, and then you found out you could get the endocrine system, the hormones, your adrenal glands, your thyroid gland, male and female hormone, you could get those all back into balance. And it started with, being out of balance from a chemistry and nutrition standpoint, lifestyle changes, healthy nutrition, and boom, you could turn people's lives around. So basically, I did that for several years. I ended up selling my practice and actually getting out of the healthcare business for a bunch of years, and I ended up doing 20 years of sales management consulting. But I've been preaching the gospel of wellness for probably 40 years, and that got me speaking on cruise lines about mind-body medicine, because my approach was always, we're holistic in nature. That means we're comprised of spiritual energy, emotional energy, the energy of thought, as well as the physical. So if you think about that for a second, what that would imply is that any program you put together to try to improve the quality of your life that doesn't at least acknowledge and embrace an understanding of those dimensions in and of itself is a self-limiting paradigm. So most of the programs that are out there don't address all those dimensions of your life. And that's why most of them then, they're self-limiting paradigms. So they're doomed to fail you no matter how much time and energy you put into them, because you're not dealing with the whole enchilada. You don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. And I was always in search of, okay, what's the truth about what's going on here? What's the truth about what's going on? Why is this cause this, that, and the other thing? So that gives you an idea of how far I went down the rabbit hole in trying to understand things and to help people. And you can't do that over 20, 30 years and then not walk away with a better level of understanding and awareness. Okay, here's the truth about what's going on if we can address the truth, okay? So I ended up writing a, writing a book based upon, at a foundational level, if you want to be successful in your life from a health standpoint, there's two pieces of the equation. Number one is what I just mentioned, is that we're holistic in nature.
Right.
The second thing is, having played chiropractor, people would come in to see me, and when I did a workup on them, I can guarantee you they had more going on than just neck pain, back pain, joint pain. There were always metabolic issues with that. And I would ask them, are you aware how you contributed to the creation of what's going on? And they would look at me like deer in headlamp. They had no concept of these other factors that were all contributing to that. And so I ended up being able to look at health and what wasn't working in people's life through an additional lens. And that lens was, it appeared to me that health seemed to be the natural consequence of being in alignment with spiritual laws and laws of nature. And if that's true, then illness and disease is really about, well, you might be violating either spiritual laws or laws of nature. And that's what illness and disease is about. And then the healing process is really about identifying where you might be violating these spiritual laws or laws of nature. And when you make those corrections, then the body naturally heals by itself. Because the body does its own healing. All we do is help facilitate that, or we get in the way of that.
Right.
So those were the two pieces. And the first book I wrote, and it embraced all these things, and there were 10 principles of wellness. What does the body need to be healthy? It needs healthy spiritual energy, needs healthy emotions, and you could go down through the list. And there was a health model.
Yeah.
And then along with that, what I could see was that, excuse me, that was 20 years ago, and a little bit longer, when Bill Clinton was our president, and Hillary Clinton, one of her things that she took on was to address the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
And there was a healthcare crisis back then. And when I looked at that, I'm looking at what everybody's focusing on in this healthcare crisis. We need to change healthcare. We need to change healthcare. And what struck me was, the only reason we have a healthcare crisis in America is because we have a health crisis. If we didn't have a health crisis, we wouldn't have a healthcare crisis.
Right.
Even though I don't hear anybody talking about health, not really. We're all focusing on this flawed healthcare delivery system. And because your healthcare isn't causing your obesity. Your healthcare isn't causing your cancer, your heart disease, or your diabetes. Right. It's all lifestyle issues.
Right.
So I ended up writing a position paper in 2009, which is what birthed what we're doing today as Health Reform 2025. And the title of the position paper was Healthcare Reform - Health Reform, Creating a Wellness Culture in America, and the formation of a U.S. Department of Wellness, which I had never heard of anybody even propose that. So that's back in 2009. And the position paper identified there were 5 discussion points and then 5 strategies for addressing each one of those discussion points. And the reason for the U.S. Department of Wellness was to be able to set up something that would spearhead this movement for creating health in America based upon a conversation of health, not healthcare. Because if we stop for a second, what is healthcare really all about? The healthcare construct is about treating illness and disease, period. It has never been about creating health. Doctors in the healthcare delivery system, their medical education is only about treating illness and disease. Has nothing to do with creating health. So we kind of get sidetracked into this healthcare discussion, where if we go back to the original concept, the only reason we have a healthcare crisis is because we have a health crisis, but nobody's talking about what does it take to create health.
Right. Let me pause you there for just a minute.
The idea for the U.S. Department of Wellness was to have an institution separate and distinct from Health and Human Services, from the Department of Agriculture, from the Department of Education, because they all have their incestuous financial relationships, what I call the pillars of the economic infrastructure.
Of course.
That are very well established. They're in concrete. And you're going to play Billy hell to try to change any of that. Okay? So anyways, I put that out there in 2009. Like everything else, no traction. Couldn't get anybody involved in conversations. Even though I was sending my book and I was sending this position paper, I sent it to the president. I sent it to Bill Clinton. I sent it to Obama. I had sent it to Trump the first time around. I had sent it to the Bushes. But I'm just not on the inside track. I'm kind of like an outlier.
But maybe there's more.
So
maybe there's more than that.
I can't hear you, George.
You can't hear me? Oh, man. How about now? Is it not coming through?
Still can't hear you.
Julia, can you hear me? Not coming
Julia,
through?
can you hear?
Nope. How about now? Can you hear me on my side?
Oh, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
I could see your lips.
Yeah.
Because it's like you wanted to jump in, but okay.
I wanted to pause you right there because maybe
Sure.
it's more than the inside track, and maybe the reason it doesn't get traction is because there's no ground game. It seems to me that if there's going to be health reform in 2025 or 2026, there must be an incredible amount of movement on the bottom. And it seems to me there's tons of people that understand the reason why healthcare is a giant problem. It's affecting all of us, people that have cancer, people that have diabetes, people that are living a life that's not meaningful. There's tons of people, I think, right now ready to help. How do we transition? Like, I think a lot of people understand that we need health reform, that we need a wellness initiative. How do you feel that? Do you want to take that, Julia? I feel like people, they know that and they want that. How do we move on that?
Well, I think I just want to say this. I don't know what's happening
I
on
can't
my
hear
internet.
Julia.
So I think, oh, you can't hear me at all?
I can hear you just fine. I can hear you fine.
I don't know if I've jumped on and off the screen, but my internet says everything is fine and my computer, so I don't know what is going. I think there's some technical glitches, but I don't think that we can reform a system that's like misaligned and against human thriving. So the entire healthcare model we have now, it incentivizes, decline. It doesn't really, it's not modeled after human thriving. So we're not proposing reform in the traditional sense. What we're trying to do is take a model and build a parallel system and structure that builds health from the ground up. So you're reintroducing, health actually, as Steve said, health follows rules and laws. And health at the very core of it is very simple. And I think that we have just as a nation sort of forgot the basics. And it's been happening over a very, very long period of time. So what we're trying to do is shift the conversation back to basics. And when you go back to basics and you build up these foundations, you put those structures in place, and you're saying, like, you know, like a garden, what do you need to do? And for me, you can see the health of a nation by the health of the children. And as Robert Kennedy Jr. is pointing out, and everybody and parents are screaming from the rooftop, the kids are not okay. I mean, and
True.
I actually don't believe that we have a healthcare crisis. I think we have an economic crisis disguised as a healthcare crisis, you know. And I think think about if you have a sick child in your house, the entire community has to come around and deal and manage that sick child. So a family's second job becomes caring for that sick child. And if you have more than one sick child, then it becomes overwhelming, and it completely changes the trajectory of how a family is able to live and achieve peace, when you know that what's happening to the children is basically a cry for help, because something is misaligned. And I think the way that society moves, it kind of glosses over children, and nobody's really listening to what's happening downstream. So what Steve and I are saying is, like, we need to go upstream and fix the problem before downstream. America's very good at emergency medicine.
Yeah.
We're very good at the end, like, heart transplant, lung transplant, leg transplant, amputee. We're very good at that. And that's crucial, and it's core, and it's so very important, but it's unsustainable for a nation. And you really want to know that when you are not around, that your children are going to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet and, live a healthy life. So I think it's a waste of time to try to say, like, to reform the current model as it is. I don't know if Steve, you want to elaborate on that.
I'm not sure if you can hear. Steve, can you hear us?
Oh,
I didn't hear anything Julia said.
Yeah.
So I hope we're on the same page.
Actually, George, you can kind of summarize it for him, and then you could tell him.
I can see your lips moving.
Basically.
Yeah. Maybe, you know what, Steve, maybe try to jump out and then jump back in, and that'll refresh your sound. And then I'll take Julia. I think what you said was absolutely amazing, and I agree. But here's where I differ a little bit. I don't think that you can change it at the top. I think that it's so entrenched. I think that the people at the top are so set in their ways. And if you look at, like, for example, when Doge went into the government and they tried to make these giant cuts, they did for a little bit, but then they were kicked out immediately. And I think when you go from the top and you try to change it at the very top, like, it doesn't work. There's too much structural possibility, too much corruption at the top to do that. I believe that politics are downstream from culture. And so the best way for health reform is for each individual to find a way to become the best version of themselves. That means individuals influencing doctors from the ground up. Is that too radical of approach? Like, I don't want it to be a full-out rebellion and not allow different voices into the tent. But I don't understand how you can change it at the top without an incredible amount of money, without an incredible amount of people already in the system changing face. What are your thoughts on that?
Part of what you just said zoomed out. So I think, but I do agree with what you said about the top. So I will start from there, because I don't think I'm not saying that we should go to the top down. I think what happens is, like, all of us are sick because we are fundamentally illiterate in how the body works. Am I here still?
You're here.
Okay, because it goes in and out on my screen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise that's going around health. So I don't think people really know how to make decisions, because we have been misled for so long, and we are put in these situations where we are almost convinced not to trust our intuition about what is good for us or our children, and you are put in these very compromising things. So what we are trying to say is not really from the top down, although it would be better and more supportive if the top came and enforced this for the rest of the people. But what really needs to happen is that people need to become wellness literate. And that comes from everybody in their everyday life. And when you look at wellness, not as a product, not as a service, not as like a health thing, wellness is a way of being. It's not a goal. So you can take many little steps to achieve wellness every single day. And over time, you create this wellness, lifestyle and way of being. And I think that's what's different. So I agree with you. The top down approach, and there's a lot of corruption and, reform that's needed. And there's a lot of policies in place, but we would like the support of a top down approach. And we do believe that a department is necessary to keep everything coherent. And, everything needs some sort of structure. Otherwise, it's just chaos. So there does need to be some sort of governing body, for lack of a better word, to be sensitive to people's distrust. But there does seem like an authoritative body that can keep things in check and in alignment with what wellness is. So what we're proposing is sort of saying, like, let's rehumanize health and put the human back in the center of the discussion. Because when you put us back in the discussion, the center, or you put a child back in the center, like, is this good for this child? It doesn't matter if it's a Black, Asian, white, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, any child. Is it good for that child? You start making very, very different decisions, and you start looking at things with a very, very different lens, because you become very sensitive to what a human being needs in order to develop in a healthy, vital, way, so they can live with that optimal potential and vitality. Right now, what we're doing is we are dimming all of the children's light and putting them in these positions because they're living in this very, very dysregulated world. So I do agree with you, but I think that's where me and Steve were trying to step in and say, like, the world and most of the discussions that we're having is because we are illiterate in what wellness means. I don't know if Steve heard that, or if he wants to jump in. I was also having technical difficulties. I apologize. So it's very hard to be like, I heard half of it.
Yeah, I know.
Half of it.
Yeah. If I may jump back in, George, your comment about the top down. I have no illusions about how the world works and how politicians work and why they do what they do and where they get their money and the rest of this kind of stuff, okay? I've been in the wellness space for many years as an active participant, as a health and fitness guy, then as a doctor, and then I was a chief operations officer in the healthcare delivery system. I was brought in as a consultant to look at some hospital issues with leadership. So I've been on both sides of the equation. So believe me, I have an intimate understanding of how things work, okay? And so maybe this will help.
Yeah.
So anyways, what I found was that when the position paper started with healthcare reform, all right, it was like, and as a chiropractor, we have really no clout in the healthcare delivery system. What I could see was I wasn't going to get anywhere there doing anything. And then here's what happened. A little bit more than a year ago, I attended a RFK Jr. rally in Washington, D.C., okay? And what struck me was his MAHA logo, or whatever you call that, his byline, Make America Healthy Again.
Right.
Okay. This is the first time that health has ever been a discussion on a national platform. So I'm hearing health, not healthcare. I'm hearing health, and I'm thinking, I wonder if we have a second bite at the apple here. The other thing that was interesting was on the stage with RFK Jr. was Tulsi Gabbard came up, Jordan Peterson, Dale Bigtree. You get down through the list of the people that have been challenging the status quo, okay? Without exception, every one of them made reference to the following. They said one of the reasons why America has so many of its problems is because it's an unhealthy population. Black and white, okay? And so I am, with what I explained about 2009 and the last 40 years, what comes to me is I'm wondering if I have a second bite at the apple. One of the things that I experienced being in the wellness space, not just in the healthcare space, but in the wellness side of it, is that there are a ton of people out there pushing a ton of information and a ton of products. It's a very fragmented industry. The wellness industry, the players in the wellness industry have not been able to coalesce and come together as a unified force, okay? And my life's experience, when I step back and look, it's you need government and you need, in our case, you need corporate America. They both keep each other in check. And in the public side of things, our inability to coalesce and bring together a cohesive movement around wellness, what I saw as a potential solution to that was a U.S. Department of Wellness. Okay, because what are the major problems? Where we went off the rail years ago was with food policy. Who regulates food policy? Not the corporations themselves. You need government intervention to hold them intact in some. So if I wanted to change food policy, we're not going to do it on the public side of it because there's no incentive for corporate America to change anything that they're doing.
Right.
In the agricultural sector. Okay. So what I was looking at government and why the Department of Wellness was to have an agency that could start with a clean slate and at a very practical level, take a look at, for example, the policies under Health and Human Services, the policies under, and Julia brought up the wellness literacy issue, because with me, it isn't just information. It's, how do you differentiate truth from falsehood? What do you do with this information once you have it? Because in all the work that I've done with people over the years, most of it was they were ignorant. They didn't know what they were doing. And I could help guide that process and then provide support. So the strategies to implement under the U.S. Department of Wellness, the first one would be, and your people may or may not know this, but to get a department, to get an agency like that, it's authorized in the Constitution for the president has to create it, and then Congress has to legislate it. All right? Then the very next thing on the list was, under the Department of Wellness, is we would look at all the food policies. All right? In the context of what's working and what's not working, from what Julia brought up from a human health standpoint. The wellness literacy is we would take and create wellness education, wellness literacy education that could be rolled out through the public school systems and have programs that would start educating children in grade school, or in early grade school, in middle grade school, in high school. Well, the federal government gives money to the school systems to do that. So the reason to use government to help facilitate that is to help govern that process from an implementation standpoint and set some guardrails. Because one of the things that we'd be proposing would be look at all the policies under these different agencies that are related to creating health. Slide those underneath the Department of Wellness, along with the financial for that. But then our whole approach would be based upon a paradigm of creating health, not fixing healthcare. And if you look at what's going on at HHS, They're trying to fix healthcare. They want to try to make doctors get educated in nutrition.
Which is still necessary.
Let's put it this way. It's a good thing. But if you look at their medical education, 3/4 of their medical education is how to use pharmaceutical drugs to treat everything. So, and where do you think they get the money to do what they do? So if you look at that whole paradigm from top down, what's behind it all is the pharmaceutical industry. There's no incentive, absolutely no incentive for them to change anything they're doing without somebody putting the screws to them. So,
how do you
if that gives a
it gives me awesome. I have a ton of questions I want to do, but let me get to some of the people in the chat over here because I see them lining up over here. This is awesome. Julia, Dr. Stephen, awesome conversation so far. Let's start up here with my friend Charla. She says she's got some awesome links. Everybody check out Charla. She's got an awesome page. She's doing really cool stuff. She says the health crisis isn't just an issue in the healthcare system, but in the stress of people being pushed into survival in life, work, and home. Check her out over there. Also, we have my friend that comes in over here. And after my psychedelic healing and cancer fight, I was determined to do something to help others. I started with helping legislation and watched it grow into other paths for many people who were part of my initial desire to help. I lost my job in the oil and gas industry, went to Peru, met the Shipibo people, and came back to the US a changed man. My ego took me to stem cells, which was not an energetic match. The universe then attracted me to a respiratory expert. It sounds to me like there's lots of people who are really resonating with our conversation and have their own stories of health. Charla says, what we're calling a health crisis is often a humanity crisis in disguise, echoing exactly what Julia was saying earlier. People aren't breaking down because they're weak. They're breaking down because systems prioritize output over well-being. Beautifully said, Charla. Until we redesign work, policy, and healthcare around actual human nervous systems instead of profit margins, this crisis will continue. Which brings me to another question to the both of you. I agree 100% that we need government as the guardrails. Like we need them to be the bulldog when the corporate world comes or when big money comes and it says, this is how we're going to do it. This is the most effective for us. This is the profit margin. This is what works for them. But how long does that process take? Like, how long does it take to create a board of wellness? How long does it take to educate children to get money for education in grade school and then high school? It seems to me like we're talking about a 25-year turnaround for this whole system to be set up. Is that too long? Can it be done faster? What are your thoughts on that? Let me start with you, Julia.
Well,
good question, George.
I know this is what it's all about.
I'm glad you put Julia on the spot first.
Yeah.
Julia's amazing. I love her writing, and she's an incredibly intelligent woman.
Oh, she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant. Well, the other thing, I'm going to jump in here for
please
a moment to sing her praises, is the nice thing about having Julia on the team. I'm of a different generation,
right?
And I come from the male side of things. All right. No, I mean, that's, 51% of the population is female. Okay.
Right.
And most of the paradigm of how things have been done in healthcare have been from a male orientation.
Of course.
Okay. So I thought it was critically important, and I'm grateful and thankful that Julia found value in my work and what I was doing and how I did what I was doing. But she brings a perspective, a much needed perspective to this conversation for two reasons. Okay. The number one, she's female. Number two, she's a woman. Well, the same thing. Maybe.
One and two.
No, I meant,
one and one and a half.
I wanted to add, mother.
We're confused about that also.
Mother. No, as a woman and as a mother. Okay.
Right.
So, and the generation that Julia is, her ability to relate, to the next generation. That, I don't play pretend that I'm anything but what I am and how I do what I do. And Julie, and even how she expresses herself, absolutely brilliant. So her perspective, as well as her ability to communicate effectively with others at an emotional level appropriately and coming from a place of truth and integrity.
Agreed.
Right. Well, to go back to your question, well, thank you, Steve, very much. I appreciate that. And thank you, George, also for the acknowledgement. I know that that's how we originally connected through my writing. So I do appreciate that you have been following me for a while. So thank you. To go to your question about how long it would take.
Right.
It seems to be like a parallel thing. Any department or agency in the past has really been spearheaded because the public has demanded something
Yes.
of that sort. So really, it will come from the ground up. And I think the change will have to start to be implemented. How fast that change happens, I think, is also going to be dependent on how much we can elevate the conversation. And I do think that we are underreacting as a country about what's going on a lot of issues. And I think health is a core issue that everybody seems to be talking about right now. And I think that everybody knows that we do need a strategic pivot sooner rather than later. And the thing about health and your biology is that there is no one size fits all like map for any of us. I mean, as Steve said, like women are not small men. Our biology and our physiology and everything is completely different than you guys. And we are not even factored into the healthcare system in a way that it really gives women their rightful place and their dignity. So, is there a specific timeline? I do not have a crystal ball to tell you how fast that would be implemented. Do I think that there is some sort of wellness sort of revolution that we need to take back, like the agency that like it's our job to take care of our health? We are responsible for knowing what is right and what is wrong and getting clear. Because I mean, my biggest thing is I do not want my children to inherit the confusion
Yes.
that what's going on right now is healthy. I mean, when I look at my children and their friends and my friends' children and our families and what we are dealing with on a daily basis, like we're all exhausted. Everybody's exhausted and nobody's okay. Yeah. And I think everybody does want to come together and say, like, how do we fix this? And how do you fix that? It's really a conscious decision to engage in those discussions, those behaviors, those programs, those ideas, and to kind of collaborate and put the pieces of the puzzle together to say, like, how can we implement these policies or changes in our local schools? Really at a foundational level, it is like, how can I implement those changes as an individual, as a mother, a father, a man, as a woman? And then that will trickle down to your children and your ecosystem of your home, the family, and then it would pour outwards. So I don't know if there's a specific timeline, but I do believe that it will be the people pushing it. And the more we push for something along that kind of change, and the faster that we do that, the faster it will come. So, but I do just think that we're a little bit complacent. And there's little fires burning everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that people are afraid to actually call it what it is. But I think that's the first step in talking about any problem is to put words behind and being able to talk about the problem and say, this is what it is. So we can call it out, bring it to the forefront. We have awareness of what is going on. And then we can, take the necessary steps. And I think once we see what the problem is clearly, then the next steps become really fast to be able to implement. Because when you see what's happening, with that sense of clarity, and you do put your children or anybody's children at the forefront of what they're going to be inheriting from our decisions that we're making on a policy level, a government level, a state level, education level. You will say, oh, you know, this is really important, and this is really, you know, this is for my children. And it isn't a partisan issue. Children are not a partisan issue. They're not a religious issue. They're not, you know, children are innocent in all sense of the words. It's the world that actually, you know, is structured to dim their light and take away their vitality. I think we need to give it back to them.
Yeah. George, if I may
please.
jump back in here for a second, okay? These are all valid points that you're bringing up. If your listeners have had the opportunity to go to the website, healthreform2025.org, do you remember what it says on the opening page, on the home page?
Education over medication.
No, well, that was mine from
instead of medication.
That was from my original position paper, George. Thank you very much. All right. Well, no, because this is. Let me tell you what I think the real value is of what we're doing here.
Okay.
And why it's called Health Reform 2025.
Okay.
The homepage says every advancement for the benefit of humanity started as an idea, followed by a conversation. We're deflecting the conversation. People default into a healthcare. Instead of talking about health, they default into a conversation about healthcare because that's who has the main stage. Nobody has ever proposed a U.S. Department of Wellness. Nobody has ever reframed this away from health, a discussion on health care, to a discussion on health. So if we can get people to click and stop thinking about making change to a dysfunctional healthcare delivery system to try to get health out of it, that's wasted energy, George. You have to do a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is you got to shift the conversation away from trying to change healthcare to health. Because if you can focus on that, see, actually, we're an ally to the healthcare delivery system. The more people that we can make healthy, the less people fall into the basket of healthcare delivery. Think about that. We are really an ally to what everybody is trying to accomplish. But you have to look at it through that lens. And nobody was looking at it through that lens. I mean, not that that's not an accurate way to say it, maybe, but there wasn't any profound national conversation that somebody else was kickstarting to change the focus. Well, we have.
It's such a great point. You know, I feel like if we can just begin to not only think about it differently, but act it out. And I really think that the change we're looking for is going to come from the youth. Like, as much as we want to create policy, as much as we can understand the reason why the healthcare system is the way it is, and it's important to understand the generational divide. Like, I think you, Dr. Stephen, you've seen the industry on the inside and out. Like, you understand the way that it works, but the mechanism of action to change it takes way too long in the way we're trying to do it. There has to be a better way. And I think it's going to come, I think a better strategy would be to maybe unite under the Health Reform 2025 and be speaking on college campuses. Because ultimately, like Julia said, it's the youth that are the most affected. When we look at the demographic cliff, there's, I think, slated to be something like 30 million people that die by 2030 over the age of 65, and even a bigger number are turning 65 in that time frame. But the people that are suffering the most are going to be the youth. They have lack of opportunity, they have lack of health, they have lack of everything, because the older we find ourselves in this generational divide. So the change is going to come from them. If we really want to create change, I think we should be trying to find a way to unite under this and be speaking at college campuses, inspiring the youth to carry the banner and informing them about our ideas, but allowing the youth to create the next policy. What are your thoughts on that? Who wants to take that?
Julia?
Well, I do. I think that
Oh, Julia freeze framed.
We lost her for a second right there. She'll jump right back in here. I'll bring up some of these questions as we're waiting for her to come back in. This one says,
sorry.
She's back. She's back.
Go ahead.
I don't know what happened. So I do think everybody, I mean, wellness is a resource and it grows when it's shared, that's how you know you're operating from a healthy place. Like, I'm not going to go destroy your house and build my house and say that I'm operating from a place of integrity and well-being. So I want your house to be stable and secure, and I want my house to be stable and secure. So I do think at this particular point in time, and I think we live in a very crazy time, but also a very fascinating time, because there's so many tools at our disposal to connect and work faster and implement changes in a revolutionary time frame. And I think other countries, unfortunately, have taken the reins and have done that with their infrastructure, but the United States has done for a very long time. So yes, the youth is pivotal and crucial, and they're the ones being affected. And, but I do think it takes all of us. It takes you, it takes me, it takes Steve, it takes every generation from people who have their eyes open, who can see that the trajectory that we're on is completely unsustainable. It is not sustainable whatsoever. And there are recent policy decisions, if you want to bring it current, like the dismantling of the Department of Education, specifically special education. When you see how much care, time, and resources a child with ADD or autism or severe allergies is going to impact how people show up for work, corporations are going to be hit, how people show up for their families, how you're going to be able to, afford care for those children. I just think that, yes, the youth is pivotal, but it's going to take everybody who cares and whose heart is open to say, yes, we do need a cultural shift, in America that is focusing on health, well-being, vitality, sovereignty, agency, and going back to our basic biology and giving people those tools so they can make decisions from an informed place of clarity and not confusion. Because right now, I mean, I see it with all the health trends that the kids are doing, and they're doing crazy things to themselves with all of this influencer behavior. And you're just like, what are you doing? And it's impossible to get through the noise. Yes, it probably does need to happen on college campuses, and it does need to come from the youth demanding change. But ultimately, I think it's anybody with their eyes open and their heart open that's going to be able to push the discussion forward.
Let me pose this to both of you, and either one can take it. Is it all one thing together? Can we have a better health system without a better economic system? Are those two things intertwined? And can maybe we get a better economic system if we have a better health system? Do you think one will affect the other in one way more or less? Is it better to work on health and then that will help the economic system? Or do you think it's better to help the economic system and that'll help the health system? Let me start with you, Dr. Bizal. You've been in this game for a long time and you have seen so many changes and been part of those changes yourself. How are those two things connected?
Oh, you have to attack it from both ends. Let me put it that way.
Okay, well said.
All right. Well, you were talking about corporate America. I actually I dropped a LinkedIn post the other day in response to, I've been in the corporate wellness space as well.
Right.
All right. And most of that fails. 90% of that fails, because of the design flaws. But anyways, I actually, before I wrote The Optimal Life, I wrote a manuscript because of my corporate experience, and it was the title of the manuscript was The Healing of Corporate America, the Ultimate Corporate Strategy for Success, making the paradigm shift from the exploitation of people to the empowerment of the human spirit for greater performance, productivity, and profitability. So you have to work it at a personal level. You have to work it in corporate America as well. And what I was calling for, I use that as a frame of reference because I did a comment to somebody else's post about corporate America and what 2026 is, should be looking for. And I was calling for exactly what you're calling for. I was calling for a new class of a new generation of corporate leadership that understands what I just said there.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's, I'll go back to what's on the homepage. Every profound advancement for the benefit of humanity started with an idea. We have an idea, followed by a conversation.
Yep.
So you're absolutely right. It's about getting the word out there. And that's why we appreciate the opportunity to sit here with your True Life podcast.
Yes.
Julie and I have been working on this for the last year, and it's still, you put it out there and the response is, that's a great idea. Next. I mean, I don't think it really doesn't sink in. It really doesn't sink in.
I think it
All right?
does. I think it does. And I think people are hungry for it. And if we allow individuals, like, I think this is just the beginning. I think that both of you, the year is the groundwork and the foundation, but a continued series of conversations that has youthful flair combined with experiential guidance. I think those two things coming together, like, this is the first of many conversations, not only on my platform, but you guys are going to be on other people's platforms, and you're going to have your own platform. And that conversation grows like wildfire. Julia mentioned earlier, there's tons of brush fires booming right now. But what happens when those fires come together? All of a sudden, you have this season of change that's coming. So sorry to interject right there, but I wanted to say, like, this is it. This is the beginning. And this is how it looks in the beginning. In the beginning, it's an ember, but you blow on that ember, it becomes a roaring wildfire. There's tons of people in the comments chiming up over here. So let me kick it back to you guys. I apologize for that.
Oh,
I think what we provide is the infrastructure,
okay,
or the overstructure,
yes,
for everybody that's got a piece of that to come together.
Yep.
All right, but they can't all just be doing their own thing off on their own.
Right.
And everybody's got an opinion. And one of the problems that I notice out there is there's a lot of opinions that aren't grounded in truth. And there's a lot of things being in the information of, especially in the nutrition space. There's a lot of information that's being pushed. And if you look at the reason why it's being pushed because there's some kind of economic benefit,
of course,
to whoever is pushing the information. And a lot of it conflicts itself out there. You can get one guru and they'll turn around and they'll just conflict, the next one. We're not selling anything. What we offer is a infrastructure blueprint on a way to change things. And you can't refute the logic of it. Again, going back to the only reason we have a healthcare crisis in America, and we have a lot of the problems that we do in corporate America. I mean, Julie and I both look at the research studies that come out from McKinsey and these other organizations to talk about, over the next 10 years, you're going to lose $11 trillion in opportunity cost loss, but for, lack of performance in your corporations because of sick people.
Yeah.
Employee health, productivity. I mean, but it's like, can you get, here's something it's interesting, and this tells you something about the time. You remember Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Successful. Okay. He wrote another book called The 8th Habit.
I didn't
Were you
know
aware
that,
of that
no.
one?
No.
Okay. The 8th Habit. All right. Going all the way back to our earlier conversation, I said part of understanding this wellness literacy and health paradigm for every individual is you have to understand that there's an emotional piece, a mental piece, a spiritual piece, as well as a physical, right? You gotta embrace all of them. You got to address all those dimensions. Okay. The 8th habit, what Covey was talking about, one of the main points was that companies start to have to look at their employees under the under the framework of there's an emotional piece, there's a spiritual piece, there's a mental piece, and there's a physical piece. Okay. So he put that book out there, and I saw him interviewed sometime after that, and he had only sold a couple of 100,000 of those books compared to the millions with his first hit. And so the interview asked him, why was your second book a failure? So he goes,
that's a great question.
He said, corporate America is not ready. Okay. And I think the truth is everything that happens in the world, in the universe, in life has meaning and purpose. Okay. There's a reason why Julie and I have teamed up to push this narrative in this conversation about health reform, where nobody has ever contextualized their approach just around health reform, which requires, and part of it is putting responsibility back on every human being.
Yeah.
For the decisions that they make. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to stop blaming the institutions around us, because again, if we were all a little bit more responsible and aware of what was going on around us, and we were making healthier decisions for ourselves, we would automatically, as a natural consequence of that, have greater corporate output. We'd have less use and need for health care. We would take away the incentive. If we were not as sick as an unhealthy population, we would take away the incentive of the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance companies. George, you probably remember a time where the big push in the big pharma advertising was, we're going to cure disease, we're going to cure disease, we're going to cure disease. Well, interesting, over time, what did they default to? We're going to manage your disease.
Yeah.
And the reason why they made that shift, there were two reasons. Number one is pharmaceutical drugs don't cure anything. Not really. They address symptoms, but they never address the underlying functional causes. And that's the whole purpose of functional medicine. And then the second thing is there's economic benefit to people staying sick in America.
Yes.
So there's no motivation in our capitalistic system for the insurance industry, the healthcare delivery system. I'm not talking about medical doctors per se, but I'm talking about the structure of the healthcare delivery system, or the pharmaceutical industry, to change anything that they're doing. It's too lucrative for them.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong. I believe we need pharmaceutical drugs, and they should be applied appropriately for the right reasons. Just like we need healthcare. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of healthcare. I've been on crutches 18 times, and I've had 3 orthopedic surgeries. So I appreciate
Of course.
what healthcare can do. I've also been in emergency medicine, and we've made phenomenal gains in our healthcare delivery system. And our goal is not to attack the healthcare delivery system. Yes, it needs to change. I mean, I heard a talk by Bernie Sanders last night talking about how problematic our healthcare delivery system is and how poor it is. And that's Bernie Sanders. And that's, everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. So we're not hiding anything here. But again, what we believe is that we're an ally of the healthcare delivery system. We're an ally of everybody out there that has a desire to want to engage in the conversation that we're engaging in right now, but it takes acceptance and responsibility.
Yes.
And a lot of our systems have told you that, well, let me throw this out there. Some people may not like what I'm about
throw
to
it out
say,
there.
But think about what the health insurance game, what is the music in the background with health insurance? One of the music in the background with health insurance is, well, you know, you don't really need to be 100% responsible for your health, because if something happens and you need help, somebody else will pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very subtle, and what's the word I'm looking for? That's a tricky way to get you to pull away from your own responsibility.
Yeah.
So we have to step up to the plate. Quit blaming. Yeah, we're not in a perfect world, but
It looks like Dr. Stephen dropped out for a minute. But Julia, we were mentioning the idea that healthcare, the background music of healthcare, sort of allows people to not take responsibility for their own health. And I think it's a brilliant point. Sometimes when we give away our fortitude, we give away our responsibility to somebody else, that skill in responsibility begins to atrophy. And when we rely on this other people to take care of us, it sort of makes our skills atrophy in some ways. What are your thoughts on that? It looks like I've had a couple people drop out right here. Let me bring up some of these comments over here. First off, super stoked you're here, Charlotte. I think this is a great point. She says mental and physical health influence each other. When this isn't addressed, it becomes chronic and spiraling fast. I would 100% agree with that aspect of it. She also says that this is a conversation that needs to happen. I agree, Charlotte. And much like Julia and Dr. Bizal were saying, even though the beginning starts with a conversation, I think that there is lots of things as we as individuals, everybody here right now, like if we were all sort of united under one umbrella, we could begin taking actions today. Like what would it look like if 100 people on Tuesday at 10 a.m. made the same post about healthcare reform? If everybody did that, if we had 100 people every Tuesday making the same post, I believe that's how something goes viral. And we don't need influencers. We don't need money behind it. We just need all of us being together on the same page, taking the same action. And it could be something that small. It could be all of us, just like Health Reform 2025, look at your children. You know, it could be a simple message like that. And if we started with something like that, people would flow into it. If we could just even have like a landing page, like you already have the Health Reform 2025, the Wellness Initiative landing page. If we could get 100 people every Tuesday to make the same post at the same time, I believe that the amount of change you would see would become rapid. It would take on a life of its own. And then that's when we could build the structure around it there. Julia, what are your thoughts on that?
Back again.
Dr. Bizal, I was just mentioning to the people, I think that there's a really rapid way to create change. Like what if, let me just throw this out here for an idea of like a call to action for people. And that would be, let's say that there's
Okay.
100 people listening right now. What if all 100 of those people made the same post about health reform 2025 every Tuesday at 10 a.m., regardless of where they are? You know, if everybody at the same time just made the same social media post, I think that's how you could drive virality. I think that's how you could drive action. And it's a simple, no cost way for people to begin to get involved. And then if they could all find their way back to the same landing page, I think that you could begin building real traction without a whole lot of buy-in on that aspect. What are your thoughts on actions like that to sort of get the conversation rolling?
That's a good idea.
Julia?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know what's happening here. I think they're cutting the trees outside, so I'm logging on through my phone now. I think that's a good idea. I think you're right to be in touch with. That's how the virality happens. I always tell Steve, sharing is caring. So when you have health information, or I mean, that's why one of the things that we were offering on was giving away that special edition of the Optimal Life, which was the foundational sort of pillars and like basic knowledge that we need to go back to in order to really understand what wellness literacy was. So we were encouraging people to take that information, read it, digest it, take what you need, and pass it on to someone else. So it's a great idea, and I think that's how we'll move it forward. We always idea for you to share.
Oh, it looks like we're losing Julia right there.
Yeah, I do not.
Yeah, she's
I
been
have never had this
warbling.
A little bit jumbled right there.
problem.
Let me kick it back to you, Dr. Bizal. What are your thoughts on what are some calls to action that we could do right now to help people sort of, with an easy buy-in? Like, what are some things that people can do to take action today?
Well, I think Julia may have mentioned this. George, I liked your idea, and I think it's we get the multiplier effect every time we have the opportunity, for example, to get on a program like yours, okay? To go out there and share share the message. One of the things that we've done on the website, the website does several things. It gives you an overview, all right, very user friendly. But if you want to do a deeper dive, there is a link there to an executive summary, which takes you to the next level. And even in that executive summary, there is a link to the original position paper. So if you really have an interest and want to go into the weeds, all right, other than that, by the time, if you don't do any of the rest of that, but you just like the idea in general, if you go all the way to the end until you'll hit, there's a form there that you can fill out and submit, and we're asking you to share your thoughts, okay? And because that gives us, feedback. Are we doing this right? Could we be saying this a little differently? I mean, we're open for any kind of thoughts and considerations anybody would like to submit. And as a thank you for anyone that submits, the auto response coming back to somebody that hits the submit buttons and sends something is a little note that says, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you taking the time. And as a thank you for that, here is a link to a thank you, free complimentary copy of the Optimal Life Special Edition, which is the 2025 refined edition, made it a little bit easier on the eyes, to the original 2008 book that I wrote, The Optimal Life, and which basically, people may or may not be aware of this, but I wrote that book in 2008, and then that book was an approved continuing ed program that I taught in the state of California for not just chiropractors, but for medical doctors. And then the book itself was an online course at psychceu.com, approved continuing education for marriage and family therapists, social workers, RNs, and psychologists. And the reason why that program got so much play back in 2006 and 2007 was because it was the only continuing ed program offered for healthcare practitioners. It was about wellness. Think about that for a minute.
That's out of control.
That discussed the wellness paradigm as we're talking about it.
Right.
About mind, body, spirit, emotion. There's a health model in there that shows this relationship of mind, body, spirit, and emotion. Then the 10 principles of wellness. So it's a how-to guide that if you had that book coming out of the womb, you would have been able to create an entirely different life.
This brings up a really fascinating point for me. It almost seems
Julia, can you hear him? I can't hear him.
Oh,
I can hear him now. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Even this brings up an incredible point, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Julia. Like, what if what's happening right now, like the disintegration of education, on some level, it almost seems to me that we're moving away from this centralized model, and each individual is becoming responsible for their healthcare. Like, what if we don't really? Is it possible that is the next evolution of healthcare? Is each individual taking their own courses? It almost seems like money's drying up in this healthcare space, and each individual is becoming their sovereign node. Is that too far out there? What do you think?
No, I think that's exactly. I think that's exactly what we're trying to tell people, and what we're trying to say is that you need, it is your responsibility.
Yes.
We do know that the body heals itself. You need to provide those conditions in order to let the body heal itself. Everybody does need to become their own sort of doctor. I mean, that's what prevention is all about. We're not saying you don't need a hospital at some point. We're not saying that you're not going to get into, an accident. But as we saw after COVID, you can't overburden a system and put all of these, have all these people coming in at the, after 40 is when health really starts to decline and your body starts to break down based on how you've been treating it for the first 40 years of your life. And then, everybody's like, well, just take this because, you have indigestion, or take this because your blood pressure is high, and no one's really looking at the environment that person is coming from. What have you been dealing with emotionally? What have you been carrying emotionally that you haven't been able to lay it down? So, you're completely right that everybody does need to start taking ownership and agency, and to be sovereign, you need to understand who you physiologically and biologically are, to want to be able to take the next steps to want to get well. Do you know what I mean? You can't outsource.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what our system has done, right? We have outsourced our health completely to doctors, so there's all these experts on how to get healthy, how to be healthy, what you're supposed to do, but you're coming down the stream. I mean, again, going back to children, you have all these children with anxiety. And if you look at why, what is happening now? If I go to my children's school right now, there's a medical form, and there is so much diseases, disorders, dysfunctions, medical, medications. I mean, that right there should be something is definitely out of alignment. These children shouldn't be burdened with diseases that should be happening in 50, 60, 70-year-olds, So anxiety is a symptom, and it's happening in our children. And you have to say, why are they anxious? What are we doing to those children that they're becoming so anxious and dysregulated? What's happening to our world that the youngest, most vulnerable people are so anxious, so dysregulated, so burdened by disease and disorder and dysfunction? And a pill is not going to come and fix that. So you're 100% right that people need to start taking agency over themselves. But again, we're illiterate in how the body really works. And there's so much noise that what we're trying to do is give people clarity and go back to basics and give them a simple blueprint of this is the foundational pillars of what you need in order to try to build a healthy life so you can start taking steps to live your optimal life. Everybody has a different level of where they're going to be based on their own biology, desires, how far they want to go and push their limits. So everybody's optimal life looks completely different. My life is going to be different than your life. Your life is going to be different than Steve's life. So there's no one size fits all solution. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was beautifully said, Julia. Go ahead, doctor.
My turn?
Yeah, please jump in over here.
Oh, she's quite eloquent.
Absolutely.
Two things. Number one, the special edition of Health Reform 2025, we actually encourage people. That's a free thank you gift. Give it away. Give other people that link. All right. Send it to your friends. This is our gift back to you. All right. Because just as Julia said, it's the foundational pillars. These are the basics. You got to master the basics. And so there are very few other publications that I'm aware of, and I've been interviewed on this book on several occasions. And what was brought to my attention by the interviewers was that nobody has ever pulled together the whole enchilada, Steve, the way you have here with this, as a basic foundational starting point. So this is a first step that a person can take, is to elevate their level of understanding. Okay, George, here's another thing. People have no idea how much tougher it is to get healthy today than it was 20, 30 years ago. And so from a wellness literacy standpoint, when I worked with my friend John and lost the weight, there were only what I call 3 pillars of wellness literacy. There was healthy eating, there was physical activity, and then there was me one-on-one coaching 24/7. So there was a support mechanism there. So, and I'm talking like 1980. So those were the only issues. Food is a lot worse now than it ever was in the past. The stress levels was a lot worse now than it ever was in the past. So back in 1980, when I was working with executives, there were only 3 pillars that I had to deal with. All right, fast forward now, 1998, San Francisco medical doctor, Dean Ornish, did a a lifestyle heart study. Okay? He proved that you could reverse heart disease with lifestyle changes. And that's all I did with John, it was lifestyle changes. Very basic stuff. Very basic. We're not talking rocket science here. Well, if you look at Dean's program, Dean added a 4th pillar back there in 1998. So it was healthy eating, physical activity, support mechanism, and he talked about aggressive integrative support for his people. The 4th pillar was stress management because of the stress issue that Julia referenced and you made reference to as well. Okay, fast forward 2025. Now in the work that I do with people, there are 5 pillars. Okay? The eat healthy, the physical activity, and what physical activity shows in all the research is it stimulates every physiological in the process in the body in a positive way, period, without exception. All the neuroscientists are now singing the praises of physical activity. Stress management, routine detoxification of the body because of all the environmental toxins that everybody's exposed to on a regular basis. that messes with your endocrine system as well as the chemistry of the body routinely, whether it's going into a sauna, infrared, cold plunges, what you have to do something on a routine basis to be able to do that. And then that last pillar is the support mechanism. So if I look back over time, the one critical ingredient, here's the truth. The only reason why John was able to lose the weight was because he had the support mechanism in place. Dean Ornish would probably tell you the same thing. The only reason he was successful at reversing heart disease in people that had angina and heart attacks, et cetera, was because of the aggressive support mechanism. Other than that, 90% of the people will fail just based on the information. So a critical piece is the support. In corporate America, what the support would look like from a wellness standpoint was to teach the next generation of corporate leaders what wellness is really all about so that they can roll out a corporate blueprint infrastructure in the context of addressing those kind of understanding that people have a spiritual, emotional, psychological, as well as a physical needs, and then create a nurturing environment around that that allows people to optimize their potential in the environment. And the truth is, there's a lot of folks out there that have expertise in all these different areas that we're talking about, that in the same way, see, here's what doesn't exist in the wellness space. And I actually tried to do this with alternative medicine providers. Back in 1996, I created the Alternative Health Alliance. And I went around to all the alternative industries. I went to chiropractic, I went to naturopathy, I went to acupuncture and Oreo medicine, and I tried to get them to come all together under one umbrella so that they could contract with third-party administrators when we moved into managed care. So that they just didn't get it. Well, we could draw the same analogy now. We don't have a cohesive organization in wellness in the same way that medical doctors have the AMA. The healthcare delivery system all falls under the umbrella of the American Medical Association. So the education, the qualifications, et cetera, et cetera. If we had that same kind of standardization with anybody in the nutrition space, in the I'll say healthy eating, anybody in the healthy eating space, anybody in the physical activity space, anybody in the stress management space, anybody in the psychological coaching space. So there are people that have all the expertise we're talking about. They're just all fragmented. So this is the other thing that this conversation, taking and shifting the conversation from healthcare to health and creating health, also opens the door for an opportunity to create the equivalent to an American Medical Association, but in the entire creating health space. But I don't hear anybody talking about it. There are different associations and qualifications, for nutritionists and for fitness coaches and this and that and the other thing. So there's huge upside potential here. There's absolutely huge upside potential. But it has to start with these kind of conversations.
It's so interesting to me. I feel like exactly what Charlotte says right here. Charlotte has a great point. Thanks for hanging out with us. She says, I feel that as long as there is money to gain from sick people, it will be hard to make a real difference in the systems themselves. And when I look at the entirety of it, like from the coaching to wellness to nutrition, it's almost, and not everybody, but it seems that the incentive is for sick people. And like we keep babying everyone. Oh, you're sick. You have this disease. You have this anxiety. You have this. Maybe you don't. Like maybe you don't have those things. Maybe you're just listening to people tell you what your problem is. Maybe that's why people are so unhappy. There's this giant megaphone of everybody telling you how sick you are, how much of a victim you are, how crappy your life is. And like when that megaphone is blared through the music, through TV, through movies, through the whole wellness industry on some level, it's like we're all hoping people are sick so that we can help them.
Well,
But in the reality,
you're motivating people with fear.
yes,
You're
and
getting,
we're an
it's fear.
epidemic
Yeah,
of fear.
It's a fear paradigm.
Yes,
Yeah, and that's that we're not about fear.
right.
Well, I
It's not
think you
about
said
fear.
that in a private conversation, off camera. Illness is really like it's a message from your body, and it doesn't. Disease starts way before you actually have illness.
Yeah.
So if you can
Well,
shift what illness is trying to tell you, instead of treating it like an emergency, then you can redirect your energy and start taking steps and start taking ownership on how to backtrack. And I mean, I think diabetes is a really good example, diabetes types 2, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a self-induced condition, based on a whole bunch of lifestyle choices that can happen to somebody. And when you start to give them the right tools, or and they have a support system, as Steve said, whether that's a family, a friend, a school, anything, and you can walk them step by step, they can start to live better and live well. So,
George,
here's
I
a great
actually,
point. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
actually owned a hospital 30 years ago. Virtual reality hospital. Okay, no,
Virtual
I'm
reality.
serious.
Okay.
And
Okay.
here's why I created it. Okay.
Okay.
And it goes to a point Julia brought up, and that is, if you look at any advanced disease, it never started as a disease. It never started as an advanced disease. Okay. If you have lung cancer, all right, if you go all the way back, if you go back 20, 30, 40 years, what you would find is there was probably a predominance of colds and flus and bronchitis and progressive kind of things before it hit the tilting point where it kicked in. If you have colon cancer, if you have stomach cancer, all right, it didn't start as cancer. It started as indigestion. It started as irritable bowel syndrome. It started as all these things early on, and then just progressed over time. And I frame it a little bit differently than Julia does.
Yeah.
Pain in your body is just a nature's way of smacking you upside the head and say, hey, pay attention. You're screwing up here. You're not doing stuff that's good for yourself. We can boil it down to very, very basic stuff like that. And then you just don't listen. And because who has the megaphone is the healthcare delivery system and big pharma. Because remember, there was a time when United States and New Zealand are the only two countries on the globe that allows their pharmaceutical industry to advertise directly to consumers.
mm-hmm.
That's crazy. That's absolutely freaking crazy.
Yes.
And then and you constantly get that, and I mean, we've seen it on television. Okay, there's some drug that they're putting out there, and it shows a beautiful young couple bouncing around. All right, and the kid in the swing, and the balloons, and the funny faces, and and then you got the voice in the background. You're just going very quickly that this can cause heart attack and disease, and cause your stomach to rupture and your legs to fall off, and it's like. But it's okay to have that disease because you got the pretty pictures there. I mean, you know where I'm going with this. I mean, it's just so we're not dealing with truth anymore. We're not dealing with basics. We're not dealing with the truth. And here's the thing. If you're going to play that game, you're going to have to be responsible. And our society and our culture has moved us in the direction of you don't need to be responsible. You don't need to be 100% accountable and responsible for every thought that you think, every emotion that you feel, every decision that you make, and every word that you speak. It starts with personal responsibility.
I feel like that should be the foundation of the movement. Like that was really well said. Like it's personal responsibility. Your health is your life,
that is the foundation
right?
of the movement. It is. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I was told that's why everything I've done in life isn't I'm not more popular than I am right now. It's because I tell people they need to be responsible.
I think that's true. I think people don't want to be accountable, and it's hard. I mean,
Our
to
legal,
live.
our legal system is that way. And there's economic benefit if you can find somebody else and not accept total responsibility. But here's I shared this concept with Julia a while ago. Okay, neither your ignorance nor your arrogance will excuse you from experiencing the truth of what you're dealing with. And that's why we have an unhealthy population. People may not like to hear that, but what you would find is somewhere along the lines, they gave up their power, they didn't take full responsibility. George, and that's why we need people like you and Julia in the world to help people be reminded of that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I agree 100%. And I think people need to hear that message. I think we all know that deep down. Like deep down, we all know that it's our responsibility to become the best versions of ourselves. I heard a good quote one time that was like, do you know the difference? The only difference between wellness and illness is we and I. And I think right? Like wellness and illness, we and I.
Yeah.
But I think we're moving forward in a way and I think this conversation is a huge part of it. And like I said, just the beginning of the conversation is what we need. And
Well,
I think go ahead, please.
Oh no, I was just going to say like I think that's a message that we're trying to say. Like health, not health care, not health reform. It's that quiet infrastructure that allows everybody to live a meaningful life. I mean, when you look at people who are living a good life, I mean, look at any CEO will tell you. And I mean, there's that famous quote, like you can have 1,000 problems in your life until you have your health problem. And then all of your energy is consumed by how to get better and what to do to get better. And if you don't know how your basic biology works, or you don't know how your body works, and you don't know like Steve said, there are rules and laws to health, and none of us is immune. If we violate those laws and we violate those rules, we will all in some way, shape, or form be hit with the consequences of those decisions and actions in our lives. Now, it's going to manifest in everybody differently because we're just different. So, we could both be eating the wrong food, and I could end up with indigestion, and you could end up with chronic headaches, but both of us wouldn't really know until we start looking at what we're doing, and we're saying like, oh, wait, let's look at the ingredients of this drink that we're consuming. Oh, it has something that's really bad for my, for my biology, and it's toxic. And no wonder my body is trying
What was that Roberta Flack song? Killing me softly, killing me slowly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I really think that's what Steve and I are just trying to say. Like, health is very important, and it is the foundation. And there's clearly something off kilter with how we're like the direction that we're headed in. And I don't think that people can solve this problem with just, an economic, fix or policy change. It really does need to be a paradigm shift in how we are looking at the future and, our children, and how to, abundance. I mean, you can look at nature, right? And you can go out in nature and you can say what a healthy, vibrant landscape looks like and what a diseased, dilapidated and other one doesn't. I mean, nature is built for abundance. It's built for health. That is the natural course and the natural state of being that we are all supposed to be operating from. Somehow it got flipped on its head, and we're all operating that like health is just this, elusive thing for the rich and famous, or, it's a privilege. And it's really not a privilege. Health is like, it's a basic human right. It's a basic fundamental human right to have clean air, clean water, fresh food, and the basic things that you need to get healthy. So when you operate from that level of paradigm and you start to bring people also who want to build with that foundation, you will create a new infrastructure.
George, people don't see health through the following lens. Okay? Everything that you do in your life either supports health or it pushes you in a direction of unhealth. There is no gray zone. It's black and white. What our society and culture has misled us to believe is that there are gray zones. When it comes to your health, there is no gray zone. Everything you do is either pushing you in the direction of health and greater health, or it's pushing you in the direction of illness and disease, period.
That's
everything you do.
Yeah, it's true. All your thoughts,
in your
words.
thoughts, your feelings, everything, without exception.
That's why the concept of integrity is so important. You have to make a commitment to yourself. I will not betray myself, and go along with things that I feel like in your intuition. And I think that's what's happened. Like, we have been misled not to trust our intuition about what's good for us and what's bad for us. I mean, I think COVID was a good example, unfortunately. A lot of people knew instinctively that these things were not good for us, yet everybody wanted to do what was right, or that they thought, or that they believed what was right. And it was out of alignment with what, the body knows to be their truth, and what is healthy for them. So you really do have to say, like, I'm not going to betray myself. If I was an alcoholic, for example, and every day I was like throwing up, and I was, I would have to say, like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to make a commitment to give that up. And integrity is very, very hard. I don't think people understand. It's not like I've decided to be healthy today and then it's going to be so easy. And I think people get overwhelmed because I think they think, like, I don't know what to do. And I don't think health is that complicated. You don't need to know how to do everything. You just need to know how to take the first step. And then, it will come like baby steps. And then you take the second step and the third step and the fourth step and so on.
Yeah, I agree. I really feel like we're in the midst of this transformation, and everybody is sort of getting back their sovereignty. And sometimes the most opportunity looks like collapse. You know what I mean by that? Like, on some ways, it almost looks like we're collapsing. But what if that's not the case? What if what's happening is a whole new wave of sovereignty? Of course, all the institutions that were relying on you to be sick, of course, all these old sort of scaffolding is breaking down. But in that same moment, maybe something new is being born. And I think that that's sort of the crux of Health Reform 2025. I think that it's something that everybody can find a way to contribute, even if it's in their own life, in their own family, in their own community. It seems to me that
I think we're just framing.
We're
just framing. We're putting words to things that people know and have felt, but they haven't necessarily known how to verbalize it the way we do.
Yeah. We're creating new language for it. Dr. Stephen and Julia, absolutely amazing. And like I said, the first of many. I think that people will be starting to see your guys' social media channels coming up. I think that there's a lot of ways people can reach out to you according to these QR codes underneath on the screen right here. But as we're coming up right here, I want to kick it back to both of you just for a moment to talk about what you have coming up, where people can find you, and what you're excited about. Let me start with you, Julia. Oh, it looks
freeze
like
frame.
Freeze frame. Let me kick it over to you then, Dr. Steven. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about Health Reform 2025, if they want to get involved, if they want to know what you got coming up next? Where's the best place to reach out to you, and what do you got coming up?
Well, you can you can go to LinkedIn, my profile there, my personal phone number's there, my email address is there. I mean, really, it's like,
Make it easy.
I'm not that hard to find. And I think it's just getting out there and just continue to do the kind of thing we're doing here, again, in front of as many forums as possible to share what it is that we're about. Yeah, I think it'll help other people connect the dots the way you've helped connect the dots here today, George, and help with that. When I said, I think that, we verbalize and reframe a little differently, things that people have felt, but they may not have known how to connect all the dots. There might be a dot or two missing, so they're not quite sure. That I think what we do is we can validate the truth that they're holding within themselves that basically is empowering. And then you can go to the website, healthreform2025.org, where you can get access to the executive summary. From the executive summary, you can get access to if you want to do a deep dive, to the 2009 original position paper. Because we really go into the weeds on all the different discussion points of what the strategic implementations would actually look like. And there are many moving parts, we'll put it that way.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. The first thing is to do whatever you need to do for yourself that's in your best interest from a health standpoint and from a personal empowerment standpoint. Stop giving up your power.
It's really well said. Let me see if I can bring Julia back on. She's kind of
lost you on the sound, George.
Oh, okay.
And then
lost him on the sound.
Right? Julia kicked out and kicked back in again. Okay, looks like I'm going to have to do the same thing.
Nice. Well, I will hang on briefly afterwards to everybody else, to everybody within the sound of my voice. I'm so grateful you're here with us today. Go down to Health Reform 2025, check out the Wellness Initiative, and become part of the movement to make your life the best life possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a beautiful day. That's all we got. Aloha.